African American Lit. Welcome to week 3. First, let me say thank you to all of you that were able to show up in our drop-in conferences last week. It was nice to see faces and hear voices and begin to get to know each other. With that said, if you didn't make it last week, there are still times available tomorrow if you want to drop in and say hello. So let's get started on this week's assignments. So as always, each week we start right here in our Google Space with number 1, our assignments and discussions. So I'm going to click and open that link. Just like last week, week 3 is now the thing at the top because it's the newest thing. And keeping with the format of our class, I've tried to keep everything completely in order. So all of the things that you absolutely need to read are at the top. I will warn you, this week's reading load is probably the hardest of the semester in volume, and because some of the language is pretty archaic. You're going to have to read it a couple of times to kind of really push through in terms of comprehension and then analysis. But that's okay. You came to college to do difficult things, and it's worth it with these readings. They're some of my favorite readings in all of African American literature. And to be honest, to really have a full breadth and understanding of where we are today, you have to begin to understand where we've come from in terms of the literature. And a lot of the literature that we're going to focus on this week comes with thinking about oppression, coming out of slavery, and creating a path forward for African Americans. Often in history classes, what you hear, what you learn about these things, particularly in the Reconstruction time period, is not from African American voices. And that is the beauty of being able to look at the literature of a people, is that you can see what those people were saying, not what the dominant culture were saying about those people. So it's really foundational in terms of the readings. So we have the 4 that are listed here. Then you're going to watch 2 things. One of them is all about genre and literature. Genre is particularly important in African American literature because slaves weren't allowed to read and write. So the format of literature comes from an oral tradition. So in addition to other types of written literatures that we might see within other cultures or time periods, in African American literature, we have an all-encompassing way of looking at genre, which is why we read so many musical lyrics in this class. Next thing that you have to watch is a video called The Atlantic Slave Trade, What Too Few Textbooks Showed You or Told You. And it's really an overview of some of the principal key elements of what the Atlantic slave trade was about as an economic system and a social system. Because you all come into college from different educational backgrounds, we gotta have some kind of common ground here. And so these are all the things that I'm hoping you already know, but I doubt that you do. All right, so that takes us to our secondary material. You'll see that both of these are lyrical, given that part of what we're talking about in this week's material is slavery, and that there weren't, or very few, were written materials by African Americans then. All right, so that's the part that you're used to. Things that are new this week. We're going to have our first major assignment. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And then for those of you that missed your drop-in conferences, I will be available tomorrow in Zoom from 6 to 6:30 p.m. If that doesn't work for you, for whatever reason, send me an email and we'll see if we can set up a time, just the 2 of us. But these are drop-in conferences. So come in, say hi, get the lay of the land. All right. And then the last thing that's always on our page is our discussion. Our discussions always come from our weekly themes, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in our assignment in just a second. This week's theme, if you looked at it, was, hey, my name is Kunta, and it comes straight from the book Roots by Alex Haley. If you haven't read the book, I'm sure you've heard of the movie. And if you haven't heard of the movie, it's definitely worth, a movie night to kind of go through it. There was a mini series about it not too many years ago, too, that's pretty cool. But the original movie, in my opinion, is absolutely the best. All right. So for this week's discussion, you're going to reply to my comment after reading specifically The Letter to Thomas All by Frederick Douglass and The Souls of Black Folks. I'm only making you read chapter 1. It's a whole book. And then making sure that you watch those 2 videos so you kind of have context for answering the questions. The focus of this week's literature is really going to be systems of oppressions. And then again, that path forward from legal slavery, including Reconstruction, and how we envision ourselves moving forward today. All right, so just like last time, you're going to choose one of the questions, put your name in, tell me what question it is, and then answer it. Here we have a bunch of options, but they do come from our theme questions for this week. So the first one is pretty generic, right? Reflecting on the things that you've read this week and the videos that you've watched, what should students today learn about the transatlantic slave trade in America and why? Question number 2, second choice. Why are the genres of speech, letters, and essays important in African-American literature? And then question number 3, which is my personal favorite and the one that I responded to, is in what ways do yesterday's conversations on both the state of and the path forward for African-Americans mirror the conversations that we see today in the media, in the news, in our educational systems, in our personal lives, in our conversations with our families? How do they differ? And I want you to make sure that you're using text evidence. So if you look at my question to the side, I answered question number 3 because this letter from Frederick Douglass, I think, is awesome. As you read through it, I want you to imagine, as I did here, that it's similar to like a Twitter fight, right? When people are going back and forth, or if you're older like me, you can imagine it as Facebook. Doesn't quite work the same in other ones, but you'll see what I'm saying, right? That somebody says something to you and you want to take that public, particularly when you don't have the same platform as the other person, right? So let's imagine somebody famous or rich, did something wrong to you, whatever it might be. And we've seen this against companies a million times, right? Then someone goes to Twitter and posts, and then that post goes viral. And then we're going back and forth on what you want this person to know, because I can talk about you all I want in public on Twitter, and I know you can see it. And I know everybody else can see it, and I can be really effective in the media that way and move my position forward. So as you're reading through that, I really want you to think about that in addition to, the context of what he's saying about his experiences as both a slave, but also in gaining his freedom. So just a really interesting thing to think about. And there are lots of ways to apply that to several of the other readings in this week's stuff. All right, so that's it for everything that's on this page. I want to go back to our class Google page, because I also want to show you the assignment for this week. So we got our first major assignment. The overview that explains it is in the link that I just clicked that says assignments. There's only one there yet. So I know that you're going to look through it and figure it out, but read everything. And here's my overview. This is what you're going to do. So I went back and forth whether I wanted you to do videos or slide presentations or something else. And I decided, since we're already working in Google, we would keep it simple and just do a slide presentation. For this presentation, I do want it to be multimodal, meaning there are limits on how much text that you should have in this presentation. All right, so what are you going to talk about? You have to choose one of the themes. So there's 7 themed weeks in this class. We've got all the way up through week 3. The other ones are also listed, the questions for them, the readings for them on our overall full calendar overview. Whichever one you are most interested in working with, pick it, right? Whether we've gotten to it or not. I mean, if criminality and, reform of the criminal system in America and how it interacts with race is something that is key to you and you're like, oh, I want to talk about that, go for it, even though we won't get to it for another couple of weeks. That's your first thing, pick a theme. Next, you're going to pick at least 2 readings from any place on this calendar, whether it was week 1, week 7, whether it was a supplementary reading or a required reading or whatever it might be, right? But it has to be text-based to use to explain that theme to your audience. And your audience for this assignment is me, of course, I'm grading it, but also your classmates, as we're all going to review them at some point. All right. So once you've made the selection, I want to do this thing where I'm really interested in talking about gender. And then you've picked your 2 readings, whatever 2 readings that those 2 things may be. So maybe I want to pick Nicki Minaj's feminist article. And then I also want to go with On Being Brought to America by Phyllis Wheatley and talk about how gender plays a part in both of those things. This highlighted part of the things I absolutely want you to do in the content section of the assignment. Define the theme demonstrate how it's presented in those readings. And there will be multiple ways of doing that, but you do have to have text evidence, direct quotes at some point, and explain why this theme is significant to African-American literature overall. Again, there are a variety of ways to go about that, but those are the three areas I want to see talked about within the presentation. The specific point you might want to make about the theme, right? So gender is huge. Maybe there's one thing within that theme that I want to make should also connect to the readings in some kind of way. This is really the point that you're trying to prove to me, to your classmates, to everybody that's looking at the presentation. All right, so I said it had to be multimodal, and that means that it communicates using things other than words, right? That we're gonna have images, still moving charts, graph, illustrations. You can talk, you can have video, you can have music, all kinds of other media components. So to be multimodal, you have to have at least two. So if you have text and images, great, you've met that component. If you have text and voice and sound in some kind of way, you've met that component. But it's better when you have more of different things as is appropriate to what you're trying to convey. So I really just, want to tell you to be creative, but also think about the technology, do what you know how to do. The best thing about using a Google product is there is literally 1 million YouTube videos on how to. So before you text me or email me and say, hey, how you put an image in, please type it in YouTube. I promise you the video will pop up and I'll walk you right through it. With that said, there are rules. These projects have to stand by their own. I want to be able to click through them and understand what it is that you meant to present. It shouldn't need an explanation in that way. It should take me no more than 5 minutes to be able to experience the entire presentation and the amount of video included in the presentation, not produced by you. See, this is me, I'm talking to you. But if I was using something from YouTube or from some other source, it can't exceed 2 minutes. I don't want it to be any more than 25% text. Yes, you can have text. Yes, you should have some, but it should not be the dominant feature in your presentation. Last, just those basic requirements, right? So first, it's due Monday, July 10th. That gives us a little bit more than 2 weeks to work on these. We'll continue to work through our regular reading schedule in class. As far as the presentation, it has to have an introduction section. Well, that's 1 slide, 2 slides, or 4 slides. It's completely up to you. It has to have information sections, and you'll see in the document that I've given you, it just says content. You can add as many slides as you want from there. You have to have a minimum of 5 text connections, and I'm talking about places where you are directly saying, this is what the literature says, and applying it to your theme. Think about a consistent and appropriate color scheme. If you're talking about oppression, having rainbow colors might not be the best way to go about that. It might be, but if so, it should be obvious why. And then be consistent with what you do. Don't do rainbow colors on the first slide and then go to black and white on the second one and then go to all blue on the third. Think about how to be consistent in what you are presenting. And the last part is just a works cited page. The very last page of a slide in your presentation should be a works cited page in MLA format. At minimum, you have to have the 2 readings listed that you'll be quoting from the class. Also, I just want you to know that you're not creating this. I've already given you the blank presentation to work with, so you don't have to worry about how to send it to me or how to upload. And that's the last thing I'm going to show you today, so that you know how to access it when you're ready to get started. All right, so I'm going to go back to our Google Class space. And you'll see now the very last link says Student Google Folders. Everybody in here has a folder, so find your name and click on it. I'm Shante, this is my folder. I can simply open up the link and the blank presentation is there for me to start my analysis and design process. I own this file, so I already have access to it. And so when I get ready to come in here and make sure that they're done on the 10th, I already have, there's nothing that you need to submit. All right, so I know that this week's video was a little bit longer, but we had a couple of things to get through with the new assignment. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit me up, send me an email. For those of you who haven't done your conference, I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And y'all have a blessed week. Enjoy your readings.